I'm not sure about you, but May was sure something for me, and I am so glad May is now behind us. I swear it's because May crossed over 6 weeks in the calendar. It was too long. It was too much. It was too long. I swear anything and everything that could have been thrown around was, and probably some more. So I'm hoping that you are also feeling slightly relieved that May is now out of here. But let's talk about it. Because of course, I have my practice that still happened in May regardless of everything else, and thank goodness for that. So let's go over what I worked through in May, what I worked on in May, decks that came in May, my journal practice, the book that I'm still reading, and some other things tossed in there. So throw me on in the background, let's hang out together and talk May. A couple cool things that happened in May. The biggest thing was all of my folkloric decks shipped in May, which is amazing news. I can't wait to see those arrive and to see how everything turned out. And then, of course, send them out to everyone. But that won't be happening for another couple of months. But they've shipped, so thank you, May, for that. You may or may not know, but I am a member of a local Finnish lodge, and I took over the responsibility of designing the newsletter. So I'm working with another member, and we are putting together the newsletter now, and it's great. It's just an email newsletter. I'm able to bring my design expertise and just organizational skills and that sort of knowledge to this project now for them, and it's really cool. It's great. So I love that I am involved in that way now. And then, of course, the standard comings and goings of a month. I feel like I did so much, but also had some time to chill. Although my sort of chill is still very much do work chill, but you know, outside of all of that, couple of highlights there I wanted to share. But of course, I have my monthly animal Gnosis practice, which for May was goat. And you may or may not know, but I have 2 goat brothers and we love them dearly. So I was really excited to see goat pop up for the month and to also be able to pull my cards for goat. The table I'm sitting at right now is my desk, and it faces the window out into the boys' pasture and their home. So I watch them all day long. So it was really cool to pick out cards for them and to see them over on my altar as well. What I really love about goats, and something I feel is surprising about them, is that they're represented to be like super hardy and that they can eat everything. And they're these just like kind of brute of an animal. But goats are actually very fragile creatures. They are prey animals. They have very sensitive immune systems. And yet they are super adaptable. They are powerful and strong in their own ways. I mean, they headbutt each other with horns. I mean, that takes a certain level of something, right? But in terms of thinking about them in a pop culture sort of sense, like goats eating tin cans and all of that, while they will eat really weird stuff, a well cared for goat is not going to go out of its way to eat something bad material wise. Now, they definitely will eat something bad that they shouldn't, but is tasty to them, right? Like chicken feed or, you know, something they shouldn't be getting into in bulk. And I love goats' nature. I call them sort of like outside cat dogs. They have their own personality, of course. And when they want affection, they want affection. When they don't, they don't. If they're interested, they're not. If they are, they are. You know, like they're very sort of set in their ways. They're extremely bonded animals. My boys are very, very bonded. They do everything together and they're never that far from one another. Yet they have the ability and the drive to take off on their own a little bit. If one is wanting to suntan and the other is wanting to snack, they have no problems doing their separate activities, but they are never that far away from each other. Otherwise, they are bonded at the hip, and I just love goats. So needless to say, having goat for May was really great, and I love the selection of cards here. It really built a very beautiful visual story of goat's physical representation, and then how we have these sort of like mirrors here of like light and dark and sort of like transparency here with the sort of fading away of the human form in the Think card and this very stark white background in the Independence card with the cliff sort of faded away there. So I really like that visual aspect to this card selection as well. Before we hop over into the journal, something that goes along with the animal gnosis that I want to talk about that I did do in May is a workbook that also came out in May on Animals and Arcana's Patreon. Tegan puts together really great workbooks. You may be familiar with the one I showed in March, I believe, and that was the My Deck Companion workbook, which is to basically work with a selected deck and go through a huge number of prompts and exercises that are absolutely reusable and learn at your own pace. This is not a standard deck study. This is not a deck study to get to know the tarot meanings. This is to build and to get familiar with a deck in your collection or deck that you've wanted to use, or maybe a deck you're questioning that you're considering letting go. This goes through so many creative aspects of getting to know the deck in untraditional ways. I barely even focused on the actual tarot meanings while working through this, and it was a blast. I had so much fun. So, all of that to say is that this one here, I considered to be a really great extension of Animal Gnosis monthly practice. Like, if you wanted to get to know an animal in less of a researchy or analytical way, this is a very embodied practice of applying self to animal and not to observe animal as an outsider. So it really kind of takes you out of your own shoes. And what I really loved about this, I was able to research lynx because that was my selected animal for this workbook. And I was able to pull out a handful of Finnish mythology books that I was able to reference lynx in, some of my traditional animal symbolism books, and to really get to know lynx, because once I started going through this, I realized, oh, you know what? I'm kind of missing some aspects to my lynx knowledge. It was much smaller than I had anticipated. So this not only allowed me to familiarize myself with lynx, but to then also think of lynx within myself. So I just felt like this was a really great way to dive into that animal workings. I know some people don't connect with animals or unsure how animals can be applied. I think this is a great exercise and practice to see if this angle works for you, because we all kind of have something that works for us and others that don't, right? And this just even takes it to another level, applying those aspects together. So if you're curious about the Animal Gnosis Mirror workbook or the My Deck Companion one that I just showed, I will put a link in the description box and you can pop on over there and read a lot more about the ins and outs of these offerings, but definitely check it out if any of that interested you. Great, so let's check out my little Animal Gnosis section in my journal as we do. So the last page in my journal, I always create this template where I put my Animal Gnosis for the month, and then each week, technically there was more weeks, but I was not going to redo this. It was just one of those. Sometimes you just got to roll with it. I just kind of like extended the weeks a little bit to just break it down into 4. So for the weekly, I used Secrets of the Mystic Grove. And once again, this just gives me a chance to use the deck. And while it's only 4 cards worth, it's still more than I would be using it. And then I also take the time to reference the guidebook, read the guidebook, and write something very, very, very brief for the week. And then I just display the selected card on a shelf, and it stays there for the week until I'm ready to move on to the next one. So a very chill, low-key process here for a weekly oracle card pull. I found that this deck I prefer to use in a bigger spread. So currently this is in my spring into summer deck edit, and I have a ton of vibrant colors. And I love this in a multi-deck spread for a reading. I'm not sure I totally love it just for a single card weekly pull. It was totally fine. There was nothing I didn't like about it. I just think I get more oomph from this deck when it's paired and partnered with other decks surrounding it to really uplift and empower the messages and the visuals in this deck. You know how that happens sometimes? Some decks feel super strong and deep on their own, and other times they just need a little bit of a helping hand, a little bit of a boost from other decks to take it even further. And I feel like that one benefits from there. But like I said, it was totally fine as a single card pull. I just think I prefer it with more stories surrounding it. And then for my daily pulls, I used the Prairie Majesty Oracle, and I really needed something that was low key, and I'm so glad I went with that intuition at the beginning of the month, because just as the month turned out, I needed something simpler. And I don't mean simple as in bad. I mean simple as I can approach the card as is and get just what I need out of it. So let's take a look at some of the spreads. I use a Happy Planner Classic Skinny for my daily tarot journal. The preview overview calendar page I use to write in the cards I pulled for the day. And I use my label maker to show what deck I'm using, and I stamp the date just in case any of this ever sort of gets mixed up or whatever. This was an outdated planner, so that's why some of this is covered, but also just looks like cool decoration too. So I go through and I white out the days, since obviously those don't line up with the year. And this is a very quick process for me. And of course, there's days I miss and I go and I backfill in. So I don't want to put it on as like I'm this super on top of daily card pulling chick. Like I'm not. I miss plenty of days and I go and backfill. But I pre-decorate everything before the month starts, or at least before I start journaling. That way I'm not having to go through and not only journal, but then also like figure out decorations. It's already pre-decorated and I don't need to think, because that's the whole point of this. It's no thinking involved, just thinking for the card and what you're writing. So what I really found about the Prairie Majesty Oracle is one that I really enjoyed the guidebook writing. I have had this deck since it came out mass market. I loved the deck in its indie version and never got it. And I was so eagerly waiting for the mass market version to come out. And so I've had this deck for a while. And because the question with the keyword plus the animal and the visual gives enough for me to go off of not needing to reference the guidebook. But in this practice, I reference the guidebook just because it's a way for me to get to know the decks. This is a very low-key deck study approach in a way. So I read the guidebook with my daily pull and I incorporate that into my writing. And I really liked the way that the animal is written about with its more natural characteristics tied into the message of the card. It's a really great way of explaining and expanding upon the visual connections and the word connections on the card, and I just think the guidebook does a really nice job of that. I will say that this deck is like multi-purpose for me. What I was just saying before about the Mystic Grove Oracle, where I like it in a bigger spread with multiple decks around it, this one I could do either way. Knowing I need something a bit more low energy, this is a total go-to. You don't even need to reference the guidebook, right? You can pull this and get plenty from it. Just a quick hit. You don't even have to think of anything you want to know. What question should you ask? It's just like, no, just allow yourself to be with the card and what comes through. And this totally is a great deck for that. If you want to dive into the guidebook, it's also a really great guidebook deck too. If you want to get into the animals, you could totally take it in that direction on your own research as well. Strong keywords. The keywords are even in categories if you want to go even deeper with that. So it has a lot to offer. And it has an easy message. And once again, I don't mean easy as in simple or stupid. It's approachable. It's relatable. It's not trying to be or do too much. And I really needed that this month. So I appreciate where this deck met me in May. I really enjoyed the spreads I put together for May. Once again, I'm not overthinking this. I'm just using materials that I have, and I'm just going about the decoration. This one was probably my favorite spread with the lucky dog vibes. Of course, I love dogs, so how could I not like this one? And it's just a great thing to feel accomplished about. I always feel really proud when I flip back through all the finished spreads and that I was able to keep up this practice. And once again, I will say it every month, and I will say it multiple times every month. This is such a great way to chip away at getting to know a deck without forcing yourself to be like, oh, I'm only going to use this deck for 30 days, or I'm only using this deck for this certain practice or this certain theme. No, it just is. It's freeing, it's easy, it's simple, it's light, it's breezy, like it's everything approachable should be. And I certainly appreciated that about this deck. Also, it's a really great way to go through the majority of a deck as well. I don't know off the top of my head how many cards this has, but the month had 30 or 31 days in May, 30 days, I think. So I get through 30 cards in this deck. And if there's 50 something cards, that's over half of the deck that I'm familiarizing myself with. So that's what I mean about slowly chipping away at stuff. And I feel like I've gotten to a point now with this journal practice that I'm ready to add in some more facets to this. I've been thinking about the next journal, and I know this is a little beyond May wrap up, but I have about 5 months or so left in this planner, and I'm feeling like I want to add in another layer or two to this. I'm liking the dailies, I'm liking the weeklies, and I think I really want to add in another theme, another topic to look into for the month, just like a once a month thing. Maybe that's something from Finnish mythology or folklore. Maybe that's something with tarot. Maybe that's something with the moon phases. I don't know. Something. I'm ready to add more. So I'd probably just make my own sort of page again and have some sort of monthly card pull that then I could write about, learn about, that sort of thing. That's where my mind is right now. I'm always learning with this. I believe in February, I had a not great time with the deck I selected for my daily pulls, but it taught me a lesson, and it taught me what works for me and what doesn't work for me. So this is a great way to also figure out what decks, what style of decks are working or not working for you, and in what capacity as well. Because like I said, some decks work great in one ways for you, and then others you just don't find as successful. It doesn't mean it's a bad deck or it doesn't work for you. It's just not working in every single capacity. And I think the more we practice, the more we figure out, the more we experiment with and stay curious about, the more you really quickly learn and figure those things out. So this literally showed up before I was going to record today. So we're just going to get right into new decks in May. And just to say, when I show decks for my wrap-ups, it's decks that physically arrived in the month. I could have ordered them the month prior or months prior, but I just show what I actually have here with me for that month. Because we're going to get into quite a lot of decks for the month of May, and you're going to say, wow, Lennox, control yourself. And I did and I didn't. So my excuse is, some were from April, so just, cut me some slack. But Great Grandmother's Faded Frontier came in. These will be up and available. And if you are a Kickstarter backer and you want to add this onto your rewards, a update will be coming soon for you. So I wasn't planning on bringing this deck back. I only did a very limited first edition run of 100 copies, and I never order only 100 copies of decks. So that was extremely limited for me. And I had never produced a deck using my previously existing artwork, and specifically my analog collage work, in a deck before. So it was a way to just put it out there and try something out. And I had no intention of reprinting it. But because I had so many requests to bring this deck back, or if it was coming back, or if I had any other copies available, it started to weigh on my mind more and more to consider to bring this deck out as one of my decks, a standard available deck. So I decided to give it a bit of a refresh to make it a proper deck with its own 2-part box, a little booklet, and 10 more cards. I wish I could make more cards for this. However, I only have so many photos available from my great-grandmother, which is where these photos are from. I tried to make more. I had to cut some out because they just weren't working in the way that works for artwork in a card. Of course, if I could have made more artwork for cards, I absolutely would have, and I did try. So we've bumped this up to 10 more cards. It's printed at a different printer than the first edition, so sadly the cards won't match. But now the deck is out in full, in a final version. I really can't make any more cards for this unless I start pulling from different sources. But I'm not trying to keep my decks open in that way where things could continue to be added. Like, I'm really trying to get to a point with decks where it's like, once they're done, and we can keep them in print. Instead of me always needing to edit and fuss and redo some stuff, which is fine because I always want to produce the best thing that I possibly can within my control. And I feel like on a first pass of a deck, you learn things and get feedback, which then you can apply to the next rendition. So I was able to edit some of the imagery in this in terms of just like brightness, darkness, saturation, contrast, plus then make it a bit more proper besides just cards in a bag with a box and a little booklet. So I'm always striving to improve upon what I do. And that's important to me as an artist and as a designer, as a creative person. I don't want to just put something out and then never improve upon it. I'm always finding things to change, to fix, to tweak, to make better in my eyes. I take a lot of pride in what I do and what I put my name on. And I try my best to make the best choices and decisions for the grand scheme of things. All of that to say, Great-Grandmother's deck is back for everyone that was hoping it would see the light of day again. And I appreciate and thank every single person that bought the first edition. We wouldn't be here with this one. I wouldn't get to express my creative voice in this way, my artistic vision in this way, if I were to just keep myself locked into one way of doing decks. You know, it's just me doing this, and I'm an artist, I'm a creative, I'm not a business person. I'm doing this for the love and the passion and the encouragement that I've gotten from all of you. I'm not trying to make an extra buck off of anyone or trying to weasel anything out of anyone. I'm just doing the best I can and learning as I go. I wouldn't have imagined that I'm here today when I started with my very first deck, Coastal Curiosities, in 2020. You know, I didn't make decks until a year into learning tarot because, of course, I was eager to design and put a deck together, but I wanted to be respectful of the history of the cards. I'm not someone that just flashes in and flashes out and tries to collect a check. I'm committed and I'm passionate. And I hope that comes through in the content I put out here, in the work I put out, in the way I run my Kickstarters and everything like that. I didn't mean to go on this whole tangent about things with this deck, but just express myself in that way, right? I don't really talk about things like that very much. So thanks for listening. And let's get into, you know what, all these new dang decks that I just brought in, shall we? All right, let's speed run it. I just call this one Carrot Tarts, right? So this deck I have had on and off my radar, and I finally was just like, you know what? It's time. It's time to pull the trigger on this one and to bring it into the collection. I got the Etsy notification that it was back, and I was like, we've got to go for it. I love the colors. I love the illustration style. I love the pips. Let me see here. Like, they are so great. I can't wait to use this now because, you know, I've been holding my decks back until I do my wrap-ups. And then I start playing with my new decks. There's some decks I did kind of open and play with in May, but it was just one of those months, okay? I love how the minors are colored. I think the only one that's like my least favorite, right, and I'm not saying that I don't like it, is the swords, just because it looks x-rayed compared to the other ones, and they do have the sort of like highlights, lowlights to them, but in comparison to what the others look like, it just stands out a little bit for me as x-ray or like inverted. And I guess you could apply that visual feature to the meaning and message of the card as well, so there's always that. I think I saw this in a Fae deck video on Forest and Frost's channel. And I loved the theme of applying the Fae to this because it does feel like that. And that sort of made me even more excited about bringing this deck in. I'm always looking for those sort of like on the edges of themes for decks. You know, nothing that's super on the nose for a theme. I like something that's like toys with the theme, could be the theme, could also be labeled as something else, right? It's those in-betweens. I love that. And now that May is over, I can start using this. I almost might even want to throw it into my current deck edit, but we'll see. I said I was going to speed run through this. This isn't very speedy so far. Now this one, I can't believe I brought in. I have an odd story about it. So probably sometime last year, I briefly saw this deck on someone's channel, and let me see the card, because this card never left my mind for probably almost a year. This card here. All I could envision in my head was a big white background with a border in the center, the illustration in the wreath, in the border, and designs on the edges. But I had this face. I had this character's face stuck in my head inside this wreath. And I searched multiple times to try to locate this deck. I could not find the dang deck. So I just had to give up. You know when you just become like obsessed with it and you're like, I'm not getting anywhere. I just have to let it go and it will find me again. Well, probably almost a year later, the deck found me. And it found me through an eBay alert for a different deck. And I saw the cover and I instantly went, oh my gosh, that is the deck. So I thought, enough of this haunting visual in my head. I'm going to just bring this deck in. And it is not one that I would typically say is me, but it also is me in a way. Like, I love the design of this. Also, I had no idea about the poem or anything regarding this. So I'm kind of disregarding all of that because the energy of this Fae realm, these goblins were really speaking to me for a Fae deck. And I know there's a mix of characters and races, as they call it in the guidebook, of Fae in here, along with the goblins. I loved its darker, shadowy, sinister tone. And it felt like one that was still playful enough and had a lot of energy to it that would work for me. And then thinking about its design in general, I could just really see it in one of my bigger spreads. And I love how the white background just allows this imagery in the center to pop off the card and really give a lot of emphasis on this visual. I love the fruit in the corners. I love the banner with the title. It gives me a little bit of like the 90s, and there's something very charming about that. There's something that reminds me of just some bits of like nostalgia and some family members and things like that. So I think what it has to offer and the way I'm placing it thematically for myself definitely is going to work really well. I can't wait to start using this. Like, this was one I had been obsessively thinking about, and I just love it. It's so wacky in a way, in a good way. So I'm just using this how it's going to work for me best in the long run, because I am a very firm believer that you should use the tools the best way they work for you, regardless of the theme, the timing, the visuals, the style, like anything, like do what works best for you. Like, I know nothing of this poem, but this is just going to work for me in a way that I can easily visualize for myself. So I am so glad this never-ending hunt has come to an end. Sticking in the goblin theme, I brought in the Goblins and Gardens Tarot. And this one, I have always enjoyed. I thought the design, the collage was really clever, really strong, great use of composition, great use of color, of visual hierarchy, of scale, all of that. It's extremely well done. But I never picked it up because I felt like, well, I don't play Dungeons and Dragons and I don't have like some history with it. So I felt like, oh, it's not for me. But it's never left my mind. And I finally was just like, you know what? I'm going to get this, because why am I telling myself no for something just because the theme of the imagery isn't something that's 100% connected to my interests? But I can make it into something that's connected, right? And then I believe I read a bit of the guidebook, and the theme is about like what happens to these characters, these creatures, after the game's done. I think that's what it said. I could be wrong there. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay, that's even better, because it's just removing itself from that entirely and creating its own world. And I said, okay, I'm totally on board. Sign me up. And I'm so glad, because I have a ton of decks that I think it's going to look amazing with. Love the cardstock. Super excited to bring this one in and start using it. Okay, we saw this one earlier in the month. I did a dedicated video on this deck, so I'll link that down below. So I have all the broccoli decks, of course. I had to pick this one up. And like all of their decks, they're really strong. There's always, of course, things that work for some of us and don't work for others. And that's just the beauty of all of this. So I'd say this didn't necessarily crack my top 3 broccoli decks, but I still very much enjoy it. It's a very beautiful deck. And if you're curious to see all of the cards, like I said, and to hear my thoughts about the collage artwork and the theme and just my initial first impressions, you can definitely give that video a watch. Another new similar style deck that I got in May was the Earth Oracle. This one also had a dedicated video too, because I could not find anything on YouTube featuring it. So I made it a priority to put it out so we can all enjoy the card artwork without guessing. And this was an instant hit for me. It is totally right up there with what I love in decks and visuals and collage artwork. It's very much in that broccoli aesthetic, so maybe if the broccoli decks aren't 100% for you, this one might be a really great alternative in that vein, or you might just love it along with the broccoli decks, like myself included. I'm actually going to show some pairings with this later in the video, because it is one I played around with some pairings, and thank you to everyone that suggested pairing ideas on this video. I will link it in the description so you can check that out. A lot of decks I actually didn't have. I do have a lot of decks, but I don't have like all the decks. And it was funny because everyone's amazing suggestions, I was like, oh, don't have, no, I don't have. But I can certainly envision it and can see why it was suggested. So we'll look at some that I thought were really cool for my collection. Now, this is a new release for the month. I was really, really excited to get this. It is a beautiful deck. This deck is absolutely stunning. Has great linen cardstock. The illustration styles are beautiful. The colors are soft but vibrant. The downside for me is this sits in the same place as Woodland Warden's Oracle. And because the guidebook only talks about the plants, doesn't mention anything about the animals, I am going to send it back, unfortunately, just because I'll grab the Woodland Wardens over this. And I try to be reasonable with my deck collections, especially because these live in such a similar vein that I just really couldn't justify having both. I mean, of course I could if I really wanted to. It's gorgeous. Like flipping through it now, I'm like, oh my gosh, but it's so pretty. If you are a heavy plant person, and especially a plant person practicing spell work, the guidebook's great. Like you'll probably eat it up. It's 100% angled to that. And it makes sense with the title of the deck. It does feel like the animals were purposely selected though, and that they do seem to align with the plant's message in the guidebook and a bit of the keyword if you're able to identify the animal. So it doesn't seem like totally random and just slapped together. It's gorgeous, it's high quality, and you should totally get it if it's speaking to you. There's my links for my workbook there. I loved seeing this card because I was working on that while this came out. So yeah, not going to stick around, but beautiful nonetheless. Just too similar for me in the way I would use it with the Woodland Wardens. But they probably would look stunning together. I had to get this little cutie. I had seen it around years and years ago, and I just wasn't at the time or place to really think about getting something like this. And then I don't know where I stumbled across it recently again. I thought, I need to give this another look. I remember this. And oh my gosh, thinking about the keywords and the illustrations from the perspective of being a rabbit, I was like, I'm getting so much from this. I cannot wait to start including this in my readings. It's that perfect size, that perfect addition. It's not doing too much and it's not doing too little. It really is going to add a lot. Sort of like the way I like to use the mini word cards or my sort of wild card decks that have maybe just more of those random phrases and aren't really necessarily like dedicated somethings. This is definitely going to fit in that for me. It's going to be a nice little icing on the cake, a little topper to the story, a little explanation to the message, an angle to the message. I just love the strong nature aspect and perspective from this. And this little guidebook is actually really good. Like they break it down into different ways to view the cards. And I thought the little bit in here was brilliant. I know this one's been making the rounds and it also made the rounds in my house. I saw this on Trina's Instagram like at the very end of the year. And I was like, I need this, I think. I remember going and looking at the deck and just keeping it in the back of my mind of like, yes, this is going to be one that I would like to bring in. And then it just totally fell off my radar. You know how that goes. And then it started making the rounds again. And I thought, oh, okay, I got to do this now. This is for sure. So this one's going to be interesting to see where it hits for me because it has a lot of dark imagery, a lot of nature imagery. I love the photography aspect of it. So I'm just going to have to see how it reads. And that just takes practice, that just takes use, and we haven't gotten there yet. So I'm really excited to see how this one goes. I've been loving seeing it pop around and what people are pairing with it, how people are thinking about using it or are currently using it. It was just one I was like, okay, just get it. You'll figure it out sort of thing. You know how that goes, right? All right, this big baddie came in and I instantly fell in love. I had to start using it right away. So I did use this one a few times. I can't always control myself. I was just eating this one up. I love the old school nature to it. It feels very 80s, 90s. The papyrus font here is like a graphic design meme font. And the leaf background does feel very old school with that blue border. It's a visual to take in for sure. And I'm obsessed. Like I'm very in this like old school vibe right now. I love how more toned down the pieces of the collage imagery are in this one. It's definitely more up my alley of being visually digestible, allowing on these rips and these cuts to be a part of the visual language in the artwork. I love that we get not only a title, but a keyword with each one that adds a lot more to just a title. And I'm excited to look into the guidebook as well. I read a couple and I thought, oh yeah, I'm digging this. I'm digging this. And I'm going to show some pairings that I pulled together with this one as well because I was just loving it so much that I needed to test out some pairings. And that I did. Just hits a lot of themes and a lot of visuals that I enjoy greatly in here. And I totally didn't even know about this deck until very recently. I saw it on someone's YouTube channel and I was like, I have to instantly have this. This is great. I don't know. Did it like just fall off the radar and then kind of spring back up? I feel like that's what happened. Ugh, dogs, come on. And speaking of dogs, the Flat of Wonder Tarot, I saw this on Instagram and I instantly had to hunt it down because dogs as the Rider-Waite-Smith. So this is so funny. This is so cute. I absolutely love the humor in this deck. It is a Rider-Waite-Smith clone with flat-faced dogs as the figures. And you know how much I love dogs. And it has this collage style to it with its illustrations. A lot of mixing and matching of shapes and textures and colors and layering them on to create these scenes and figures. And it's so cute. I am obsessed. I feel like I have so many decks this month. I'm like, I'm obsessed. I love it. This is the greatest thing ever. But isn't that what makes part of this all so exciting? This makes me smile. This almost gives me vibes of that Magical Cats tarot I got a few months back. That is just so quirky, that has so much personality, that is undeniable, that it brings a smile to your face and a chuckle, because it certainly does with this humor. And I think that's another important aspect about the cards, the decks, working with these as tools. Like, not everything has to be so deep, dark, and meaningful and like have this super impressive purpose and reason. Things can just be fun and lighthearted and a good time. And I think having that balance and exploring those aspects of the decks, of yourself, is a part of this whole process. And I love bringing in decks that bring in that level of humor. Speaking of old school, I got the Horsepower message cards. This is an out-of-print deck, and it was one of those where I've learned my lesson in the past. I discover a deck, I go to see where it's available. Okay, it's not. I go check eBay. There is one listing. And I thought, okay, this isn't one that like a ton of people are going to be after. So I sat on it for a few days, and then I was like, okay, no, like I need to have this. So this has a photography style, and the backs have phrases and keywords, which I know I said I don't like cards, I don't like decks that do that, but there's always exclusions to the preference. I love it has this sort of old school border and box for the keyword here. And I grew up at my childhood best friend's house, riding horses, going to horse shows, all the things horse related and lots of farm animals related. That horses have always held a very special place for me as an animal in my life. And when I discovered this deck, I knew I had to have it because I haven't come across an actual like horse deck that has spoken to me. And this one has the humor, has the personality, has just regular everyday aspects of horse life that I thought was really impressive and worked for me. But what I was saying about searching on eBay is that the one came up. I knew it wasn't going to be like a hot item, so I sat on it, finally got it. It was the one listing because, like I said, this is out of print. The time that's happened to me before, I didn't get the deck, and now I've never come across the deck ever again and don't know if I ever will. So I was like, I'm not letting this happen to this one again. So this is going to be interesting to see how this works out for me. I just really needed the horse representation in my deck collection. Let's get into some of these pairings really quick. I feel like Antique Anatomy can go with everything. And I didn't include it to show in this list, but I was like, you know what? I think it would be a shame not to still show it, even though I feel like it's one of those givens, because it does work really well. And I find that it even works well with Antique Anatomy in the center and then 2 oracles on the sides. They both live in a generally same art visual world here. The colors usually play really nicely together. The aged, simple, plain paper background of Antique Anatomy allows this oracle collage work to really do the shining here. This isn't overwhelming enough where it really adds into the visual. So you get this very pleasant and cohesive visual story across all 3. I really enjoyed these together. I really enjoyed the Rain Shadow Tarot with this as well. I thought the richness of the colors from the tarot really allowed the oracle deck to like pop in the spread and give that attention and that focus onto the oracle. And then also because the tarot does use some vintage type style imagery and the color palettes are rather cohesive, that these would play well together and both have heavy uses of nature aspects, which tie them together even more. I just love these. I love the contrast. I love that there's so much color coming off of the rain shadow, but still in a very controlled and limited way. And that because the imagery of the Earth Oracle is already rather simplified, it allows the details of the rain shadow to really feel strong and potent in the spread, but allows the Oracle to still be present and first amongst the 3 cards because it is a much more simplified visual. I just am eating this one up. I really enjoyed the Nomad Tarot for maybe a similar reason to the Rain Shadow, and it's this really strong use of contrast across the 3, where this black really allows the creams and the light tones of the Oracle to pop in the spread. When we get to the pips, I feel like it's the perfect match. I like the looseness and the simplicity of the illustrations paired with this collage illustration. Would this be like a 100% perfect match for me? No, but like I talked about in my how to pair decks video, it checks a couple boxes, but maybe not all of the boxes. So we have like really strong contrast and visual hierarchy across them. We are crossing some of the same themes with nature across all of them. Tonally, I feel like they can speak in a similar way. I think with the pips being such a strong feature in this deck that it allows the Oracle to be the big bad talker and allow the narrative of the tarot to enhance that story. That's just one way of looking at it. So I just really enjoyed the strong contrast here. Like that's what really stood out and worked for me. And I could see this working with another deck or two with these as well. The Nature Speak Oracle, I felt like is another one that maybe isn't perfect in all the ways, but I think energy-wise, thematically wise, tonally wise, and sometimes visually too, they really speak the same language for me. I love that we get this pop of photographic reality with the mix of some of these more fantasy elements here, but there's a lot of realism in the collages in this oracle too. So it allows a playfulness of reality amongst these. And I thought they just looked really cool together. I liked the light cream borders with this like light mint border. I thought they looked really complementary together. And of course, the theme of nature, very strong across both of these. Plus, we have photographic elements in this one, kind of. So it does play into bringing in these actual photos into the visual mix here. This one just really charmed me. I thought, ooh, this makes me feel like warm and cozy and all the naturey, good feeling things. I love the vibe. Every Little Thing You Do Is Magic had really great potential to be paired with the Earth Oracle because it is much more simple in its collage execution, while the tarot is a lot more busy, especially with these borders and the doodles and the frame. But because it uses so many different layers with its collage that it's easy to pull in a mix and match of color blocking and vintage photos and anything that's more illustration style because of all the different executions used in this. And this could totally be a 2 tarot, 1 oracle as well. I kind of preferred this way. I think this is the way I practiced it when I was testing these out, but I really can't remember because I felt like the double tarot in the spread was too much border and it felt extremely distracting. But I enjoy pairing other collage decks with this tarot because it almost simmers this one down and then adds more of a oomph, more of a punch, more of a lift to this one because I feel like this one can sometimes fall flat, especially the guidebook is just not great. It really does feel like it's written for any tarot deck out there, and it didn't feel like it tied into the actual visuals of this deck. In reality, this deck felt like it got pulled between 2 different directions, and it never went far enough in either way, so then it kind of just feels like a mishmash of 2 things, like a 2015 Tumblr aesthetic with collage art. So I like to pair it with more simplified collage, like I was saying, more minimalist collage to really allow the elements and the layers to shine in this tarot and allowing these to be the side characters to play into all of this in the tarot. I really love this combination and I really enjoy using this deck with other decks. This is another one that I feel I very much enjoy when there's other decks in the mix with it and you can add on to its story here. I'm really loving these. I'm like feeling like, ooh, I kind of want to play with this right now after I get done filming. All right, let's check out the pairings that I played around with the Sustain Yourself. This one I fell in love with. Okay, the Tree Whisperer's Secret Garden. With this, the greens really pull out not only the theme of this deck, but the actual visual design of this deck as well. And it really gives everything an anchor. It feels like it's in the same world. It's coming from the same theme. These could be decks that were always meant to go together. That's how I felt putting these together. And I thought, oh, I am never not using these together because they are reading so beautifully together, visually and message-wise. I love how the mirrored effect is playing into the left and right sides of the spread as well. There's definitely something to pull from there too. And I just love the world that this created. I felt like an instant hit when I put these together. I can't remember if I had the Tantric Dakini Oracle just in the center or on the sides here, but we're just going to rock it on the sides because I think it could work both ways. But I really liked these two together because it felt like the collage was living in the same era, the same time. While they're different styles, while this is showing a lot more of that hand nature with the rips, they're very simplified in the pieces that used. So neither of them are speaking over one each other too much. There's a great balance. I'm feeling like I might have had it in the center and the two sustain yourself on the outside. But you get the idea here. The collage styles are going well together. The Dakini only has like a couple pieces per card, maybe two, which you know I love. So we get the sustain yourself to really have the moment to show all these layers and pieces on the collage to be the main focal point here. I just really loved the world that this was building. And I've mentioned before, this Tantric Dakini I use intuitively. It is totally my own theme and interpretation, and I'm even tempted to rename it because I feel like I could make it even more powerful for myself that way. Maybe I should go through and curate some of the cards that I don't always necessarily like feel are a good fit for me. Maybe that's what I should do first before I get into a mod. But these two are definitely very cool and interesting together and absolutely worth trying out. Same thing with the vertical oracle here. You could just do one in the center and the two sustain yourself on the sides. I think that's probably what I had done, but we're just going to roll with this for the example. Once again, another collage deck pairing that feels like it lives in the same era. These two are also doing something very similar for me as the previous pairing was doing as well. They're not doing too much together. The vertical oracle has a good amount of pieces and layers to it, but the compositions are really clear and focused and aren't pinging around everywhere with so much visual information. You're able to digest and intake what's on all three cards across the spread here without feeling overwhelmed, like this is too much, you don't get it. All of those things that sometimes you can run up into with pairings and putting together a lot of different visual languages. These two definitely play very nicely together. It might even be interesting to put all three together, the Dakini, the vertical, and this. The last pairing that I really, really loved, of course, there's many others I've tried, but I just wanted to show you the top hitters for me. The Noisy Museum, once again, a collage deck that we are mishmashing together here with the Sustain Yourself, and I think they work beautifully together. Once again, the more mixed media, busier layers of the Noisy Museum pair really well with the simplified execution of the collages in the Oracle here, and the colors play well. Even the different eras of imagery used play across really well because these are really taken out of the era that they're from and placed into this almost like timeless scene here. And I think they play really nicely. I felt the most excited probably about this pairing and the Secret Garden pairing. Like those felt the most me, the most impactful ones I would probably try first right out the gate. But that's what I love about pairings is that it really can change a deck's voice and personality and purpose depending on what it's paired with. And I could go through pairings on another day and come up with a completely different group. I mean, maybe, but there would definitely be some different ones. There would still be some overlap. That's also what I find so interesting about just how the brain works and creativity and visuals and art and all the things of like how we all put the pieces together for ourselves and how we see what works and doesn't work. I just find it all so fascinating. Okay, last thing to talk about are books. Well, one book for May. This is North is the Night. I don't have the dust cover for it. I bought it secondhand on eBay, so I just buy the cheapest one. I don't care what the condition is because I'm just going to read it and I might not like it. So I'm almost done with this one. I have about 200 pages to go. And it's interesting because I was reading the previous Finnish Mythology series that I still haven't finished the fourth book on. I've barely even started the fourth book, but I decided to read this one to just have a change of pace. Even though this one's also about Finnish mythology in the underworld still, at least this is bringing in different characters and a totally different story and theme to it all versus the Shadow Rivers series. That's the title of the first book. I think the series title is like Underworld Gods or something like that. This one is just lacking a lot of description. Like there's not a lot of world building or character building. It's just slap you right into the story, right into the character dialogue, and every chapter ends like on a cliffhanger. And it's one of those where the POV switches every chapter. Thankfully, it's only between 2 characters, but I really don't like that. That's part of my hang up with the book 4 of the series I'm trying to finish, is that book 3 brought in the switching of POV on the chapters between like 3 characters, maybe 4 characters. And now book 4 is doing that same thing. And I was just like, ugh, it's so cumbersome. I don't enjoy it. I just want to read through the story, you know, especially when you find yourself liking the main character and how things are going. It's like, don't flip-flop me around, please. Anyways, this one is interesting. It's not that I wouldn't recommend it. I would. It's just not like a top hitter for me, you know? So I am still enjoying it. I really am curious on how it's going to end here. There is one more book coming out sometime this year, apparently, to the second book to this, and then that's it. So that one's called South is the Sea. I will absolutely read that. I'm hoping I can finish this one this month, and I can report back in June, wrap up, to let you know how it went. I just am not feeling as like hooked as I was on the other series, but I'm still enjoying it. And I'm enjoying all the different character representation from the gods and goddesses of the underworld that the other one didn't. And then the other thing that I did in May was go through some Udemy courses, which I had purchased some Udemy courses and I've just been so slow to getting to them. So I actually finally got through 2 and I started a 3rd. But the 2 I got through was the animal myths and legends in Finnish folklore. So that one went over like, I don't know, goodness, like 10, 11, 12 different animals. So that was really great to listen to. And these are ones that I would need to reference like over again. It wasn't stuff that like information that instantly stuck in my head, you know? And then the second one that I finished was Finnish Mythology, Tree Worship, and Tree Spirits. So that one was really cool. Once again, definitely would need to watch that one again and take notes because like my plant knowledge is pretty minimal compared to my animal knowledge. So those were really great. And if you know, finding that type of material isn't always the easiest. We made it through the month wrap up here. That was an especially long one, but I just had so much to share and talk about. And I tried to have all those touch points in these because I definitely enjoy the structure to these wrap up videos. And I love sharing these parts of my practice with you. So thank you for hanging out with me through that. Here's to hoping that June is a much better month. If you're looking for some deck inspiration for June, definitely check out that spring into summer deck edit. I have a ton of vibrant, colorful, bold decks in there that may feel like a perfect fit for June for you. You know I will be back with more deck and design talk. So thanks for hanging out. Definitely let me know how May went for you. And if it wasn't so great for you either, I am really hoping, fingers crossed, that heading into summer here will be an amazing thing for all of us with this brighter and warmer weather. And until next time, I will catch you on the next video. Bye.